So we have make. And I'm going to start off talking about this is how I create objects. People always wonder, make is what I consider, or maker is what I consider the current or modern inventor. And so I start off by, I'm going to talk about how I grew up on a ranch outside of Snook, if y'all know where that is, in a little thing, it's called Tunis. I don't know if you've heard of Tunis, Texas, but I'm about it. You're looking at it. And I grew up going to school in Bryan, went to Bryan High, ended up going to A&M, and right now I'm currently an electrical engineer at Texas A&M. And growing up, I grew up on Legos and taking apart all my toys, and my mom had one rule, and that was don't burn the house down. So we're going to start off, what is a maker? And you Google it, that's what you get. It's kind of that's kind of what you expect to get, right? And so, oh my goodness, I don't know what's going on here. Sorry about this. All right, so I see a maker as three different things. And first off, I say it's someone that can see through an object. An example of that would be last week, Jose brought me a printer, and he said, I want you to make a submarine controller out of this. I want you to be able to drive something through water for a 6-year-old. And that caught me off guard. I mean, I've never done anything like that before, and it kind of made me think about it. And I always consider a maker someone that can see through an object and its full potential, someone that can know what everything's about. So instead of looking at a printer and saying, oh, I can take the motors and make a car, someone that would look at it and say, I can make a CNC machine, turn it to a 3D printer, put a 3D head on it, and you have a 3D printer completely programmable by your computer. And actually, I turned in what our printer was into a little thing back there in the corner next to the chicken nuggets. It's a little crane that we can control robots with. And then, second off, it's someone that's got to enjoy engineering or math. I know some of y'all know Mickey Bird, and he's one of the guys you can really start talking. I call it talking nerd to, talking geek to. You can converse with them about the same thing and get them really excited, and you can have a very good conversation. It's kind of funny. I live with 4 engineers right now in college, and my girlfriend the other day, she looked at me and she said, I think you're the only guy I know that enjoys going to engineering classes, someone that looks forward to lab, and I love it. You get to go. A&M provides all the toys, all the tools. If you break it, it doesn't matter. They'll give you a new one in some cases. And I think it's great. And so it's someone that must enjoy what they're doing. They say if you like what you're doing, you're not working at all. And then third, someone that can finish a puzzle and complete a task with pieces from different sets. And that's basically like what Jose said. I wanted to build a CNC machine type object to move along a fish tank. And that's taking parts from everything and put them together to finish the puzzle, to finish the goal with multiple different things around you. Mickey last week actually asked me on camera, right in my face, why I make. And I had never been asked that before. And so my response initially was obviously career aspect. You ask any engineer, why do you make? Why do you invent? Oh, I want to get a good job. I want to do this. And looking back on it, I really like to make because it's relaxing. It's fun. Anyone that's kind of invents on their own, tinkers a little bit, you can almost say it's mindless. You're actually thinking, but since you're in the zone, you get in it, you're not thinking at all. You're just kind of letting your hands work and you'll make things. And this is one that any of you that make or create something new, you'll get asked all the time, how did you make that? Where did you learn how to make that? Everything like that. And so I get asked this all the time, and my mom would completely agree with that quote in my room at home. A pile of junk. It's now stacked up in my closet somewhere. Everything's disassembled. But people always ask me, where do you come with that idea? And I grew up a competitive shotgun shooter. I shot skeet. I've been shooting it for 12 years, I think. And the best times when I came with ideas is when I was relaxed. That's either when I was shooting a round of skeet or I was in a hot shower. And I'd come up with them, and I'd be shooting around and completely relaxed. And I'd be shooting pretty good score because I was so relaxed. And I'd come up with an idea, go back. My dad would be pulling the little targets for me, and I'd tell him about my idea. And he would say, oh, no, I think you need to do something else, or you're going to kill something, or you're going to poke your eye out, you know, some dad thing. And so I would then go back, shoot another round, redo my idea in my head, end up having a pretty good practice, go home, put the gun up, start tinkering, start taking something apart. I'd find a solution to my problem. Same thing with taking a hot shower. You're in there, you're letting the hot water hit your head, and then all of a sudden something pops up into your shower, into the lab. Start trying to start making things. And then people always ask, where do you learn how to do something? People will always tell me or text me, hey, do you know how to set this up? Do you know how to do this on a computer? And so without telling them, I'll just Google it. I'll just look it up and then text them back and they'll be like, oh, how'd you learn to do that? And I'm like, I wanted to know how to do it, so I looked it up. Google. It's pretty easy. And the reason I think is unique to makers is they're not going to just try to have someone tell them what to do. They're going to find out how they can do it. I thought of a way that if you know instructions for one object or how to make something one way, it's going to be only so good. If you learn how to make it 10 different ways, it's going to be 10 times as better. You'll have 10 different ways to make it. And then lastly, the way my method, I guess you could say, of how I make something, this happened last week when I was making some things for Jose. I came up with the term the MacGyver method. Ruthie mentioned MacGyver earlier, and it's kind of funny. I like to limit myself, stick myself in a room with only the materials at hand, have a goal. In my case, it was teach a 6-year-old how to make a submarine, and just start working. And I figured if you only have certain objects, you're going to get really creative with what you have. You're going to have to figure out what can work, what works the best, and really, honestly, get very creative. And it's kind of interesting. I always thought you could go to the store and buy more materials, come back, make something, get up. And I found myself, if I did that, I'd get up, go to the store, start looking for things I could make, come up with a new idea, go back, start a new project. And they're like, oh, I can do this. Get up, go to the store, come back, start a new project. So I ended up with 4 unfinished projects, whereas if I just made myself sit and finish, you could come up with one finished project that worked. And then you go back, spend a little bit more Jose's money, and come up with a new idea. And then this is some of the things that, this is going to be the fun stuff. These are some of the big ones. I texted my family the other day and said, what are the biggest things that come to your mind of things I've made? And so these are what you get. My first electronic device was this thing. I don't know if many of y'all have seen it. It's a toothbrush head, a pager motor, and a cell battery. And basically, you'd tape the 2 wires together, the motor would vibrate, and it would bounce up and down. And since the bristles are angled, when they squish and they expand up, it's going to push it forward. So you'd stick it on a table, and it just buzz around until it fell off the table or it ran out of battery. It's pretty interesting. I don't know when I made that. Probably 6th grade, 5th, 6th grade. My first robot that was actually programmed was a sumo bot. And this thing came in a kit. My mom got it. This will take him 4 days to complete. It'll take him a while, keep him busy. Took it out of the box, had it finished in about 2 hours, and then looked at it and said, what does it do? I built it so fast I didn't even know what it did. And it's actually, that's what it looks like. It's got 2 IR sensors on the front. They're supposed to find another identical robot, and there's little sensors on the bottom that it'll track a black line, on a white piece of paper, and it'll follow. And if it sees another robot, it'll attempt to push it off. So it's a sumo bot. And you make a circle, and if it goes out the line, it knows it's dead. And so being out in the country in Tunis, Texas, let me tell you about all the robotic competitions around. This thing pretty much sat on my shelf once I built it. My first engineering design, this was in high school. One of my teachers looked at us and said, design scissors you can use if you don't have a thumb. Something you never really think about. I mean, scissors require a forefinger or a finger and a thumb. And so this was, I wish we had printed it out. We had a 3D printer, but we didn't get around to it. And basically, the bottom part would be rubber, and it's on your palm. Then you had a brass knuckle-like thing on the top, and there were springs in it, so it was always open unless you squeezed it. That's basically my idea of my first engineering design. Next, we have what I call my remote control phase, which I'm still in. And the first one you see is a remote control tank with a mounted airsoft gun. And so I had a broken remote control tank and a broken machine gun that shot airsoft BBs sitting next to each other one day. So I said, why not put them together? And it turned into my cat's worst nightmare. So I'd drive it around and shoot the cat, and it actually turned like you could turn it, and it was a tank on treads. It was unstoppable. And then next, that led to putting things on remote control toys, and that led to my first camera on a remote control plane. The first time I flew it, the camera was facing the wing, didn't get anything. And then a few flights after that, I had the camera fall off the plane. I still have that video of it landing almost in my aunt's pool down the road. And then I have an actual video of the plane losing connection with the remote control and the whole World War II spiral straight into the ground. And it catches right at the last minute, but then I landed because I had to go change my shorts. And then we have the camera on a remote control car to ask a girl to prom. Talk about a geeky way to ask a girl to prom. I had put my cell phone on a remote control car, and I Skyped it with my iPad, so my face was on this remote control car. And I was sitting in the hallway with the remote control, and I drove it into her classroom, had a balloon on and everything. And she's like, what the heck is this? And I said, hey, you go to prom with me. And of course, the teacher she was doing it in was an electrical engineer from A&M, so he ate it up. And then next, one of my most recent things was the top right video. It's a remote control that I put in my room. And so I always get in bed, forget to turn on my fan, forget to turn off the lights, and it's always after I get comfortable. So I have a remote control that I click, and it turns off turns on or off my fan or my lights. And as soon as I made that, my sister, an English major, looked at me and said, you know they sell those, right? You can just buy them. I told her she wasn't an engineer, she wouldn't understand. And then the last one, the bottom right picture, that's the reason why I first cried in a classroom. It started off as a remote control car, that's about the size of a ping pong ball. And I took off all the motors, and it had a high-pitched beeper, and on the bottom it had a buzzer, and on the back side it had a vibrating motor, and we stuck a magnet on it. And my math teacher was really cool. This is a different math teacher. She was really laid back and liked people to think outside the box. And so one class, we magnetized this thing to her desk, and we were sitting there, and we were working independently. She's working on her computer, and we hit the remote, and it vibrates her desk. And she's checking her phone, thinking her phone is vibrating repeatedly. She even gets up and asks the class if our phones ever went off without any messages appearing. And meanwhile, me and a buddy that were in on it are crying in the back of the class. We're laughing so hard. We ended up having to tell her about it, and she ended up introducing me to her husband, who had me working in a lab shortly thereafter on cockroaches, making them remote control. So you never know where it's going to lead. Then we had the tasers. This is something that everyone always wants me to make them, and it's basically, I actually have this whole instruction manual. If y'all want it, you can find me after. And it's how to make a taser out of a disposable camera. And basically, a disposable camera comes with a flash built in, and it has a huge capacitor that it charges and releases into the flash. It's about 330 volts. You put 2 wires on the capacitor, charge it up, touch your friend, he screams. It's great. So these are the instructions manuals, and I actually printed these off and gave them to, after I shocked my friends, I gave them this so they could make their own. And that's just the first page of it. And then we had Iron Man. How many of y'all like Iron Man? Yeah. A few? Yeah. So I watched Iron Man, came up with great ideas. Starting the bottom left, that's a arc reactor replica. My high school teacher that I did the promposal in, he actually gave extra credit if we dressed up for Superhero Day. 3 weeks later, I made that. It took me 3 weeks. All those pieces are hand cut. Next test, I got 20 extra points on it. So totally worth it in calculus. Yep. And then the top left is a mask that lights up or blinks with the little controller you put in your pocket. And then if y'all have ever seen the scene where he aims at a tank, it pops up and he shoots it, that's what the top one is. That was actually an arm mount that had a model rocket that could be launched with a controller on your arm. Ran that one by Mom. She said, you're not launching anything off your arm. That turned into the thing on the right, which is its own little turret, which did the same thing. And luckily, looking back on my firework history and what I've done with them, it's probably a good thing they've never launched. Yeah. And the bottom one, this is 3 flashes from disposable camera, ran off the capacitor bank. I had it in my palm, and so you could charge it up, walk up to someone, and flash them with 3 flashes at once. You can kind of see it where it turns white. That's when it goes off. The camera won't pick it up. I was actually going to wear that for Halloween, except the whole arm piece I had made was made out of metal. So you brush against something and it'd shock the snot out of yourself. And so I decided that probably wasn't a good idea to wear that to a party. And I think that was there's 3 of those 330 volt capacitors lined up. And then finally, my last slide is what I've been working on for Jose. And we're actually in the middle of it, our Seed Academy. And you can see this is a hydraulic robot that we're teaching kids how to use by syringes. So you pull a syringe, it opens, closes, you can move it around left and right. And they actually finished them today, and they got a kick out of them. They're trying to pick each other's up and knock each other's over. It turned into like a competition, really. And they did it last year, and Jose came to me and said, we need to make it smaller, more efficient, faster. And I have these plans as well, and that whole thing cost $3.68 to make that whole thing. And so, it's being on Jose's credit card, he really liked that. And then also the thing on the right, so he gave me the printer to move, and you can kind of see it's a crane, so it moves left and right, and it has a thing that moves up, out and back. And it's back there. I didn't add the picture in. It's got a huge control board because we're dealing with 6-year-olds. They can't, you put a little bitty tack switch on a breadboard and they're not going to be able to click it. So I made it so big old piano keys, they can click them down. It's real easy, real user-friendly, and they can move that back and forth. And we attached this little submarine to the end that was It's a water bottle with holes punched in it with a balloon in it, and they blow it up with a syringe, and it creates a ballast. So you blow it moves up, they suck it out, it moves down, and they use this to make it move around the tank. And I put that little thing in the top above it with the 2 balls and like the container. That's an underwater camera that I made out of a webcam. And so we have it attached to this laptop, and they can look at the fish if the fish are not scared to death of it. Usually they don't come out except for that one orange fish you see at the bottom. And they can drive around and try to look at the fish. And so for a 6 to 8 year old, that's how you control a sub. So thank you for allowing me to come and speak to y'all.